You are listening to Zero Hour, a Scarlet Rhapsody podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome to another edition of Zero Hour. This is Eri Kagami, and with my co-host is Jared Greek, or you can call him Jay.
Hello everyone, we are back from Long Beach Comic-Con, and boy are my arms tired.
So we did one day of Long Beach Comic-Con. We were able to do Sunday, but there's some backstory to this. Normally we don't really cover the reasons why we don't attend the convention, but
I think this is a story worth telling.
So we didn't go on Saturday because there were just some complications going on. Just to kind of give you some background, it's not uncommon for conventions to have multiple events going on at the same time. Case in point, you have the Long Beach Convention Center, you have the ping pong convention going on, you had a couple of religious groups who were present too, doing a congregational type service. But apparently the ping pong event was such a big deal, it had to take up the entirety of the parking spaces that are normally used for Long Beach Comic Con. Well, our group was ready to park at the usual place. We kind of have our mental GPS down. Okay, we're gonna go just make a turn here and do it. Lo and behold, we find out that parking's closed off. And they wanted us to park over on Shoreline. So Shoreline Village is a touristy kind of area. It's open air. And I'm like, well, this is a bit of a walk to the convention center. Is this really worth doing?
Not only that, but Shoreline also had a lot of cars already parked there because it was Labor Day weekend and people go to the beach.
So we were just kind of eyeballing that a lot and it looked pretty full. So I'm like, well, is there any other place that we can park, And then I was also thinking to myself, because I wasn't the one I wasn't the one driving. So I was looking at my mobile phone to see if there was any updates from Long Beach Comic Con to Twitter or even their Facebook page to see if there was any news on parking. Lo and behold, there was nothing to tell us where to park, or just kind of give us a heads up, oh, by the way, this event is going on. They'll be using these lots. Park on this lot. Blah blah blah. It's safe. There's plenty of space. And by the way, we have overfilled parking at blah 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 blah. How simple would that have been to just update on social media? Because when I was browsing through the Long Beach Comic Con social medias, the latest post they had was they only had their latest guest announcements. I'm that's cool and all, but if I'm scrolling through, I just want to see the day of updates. I'm I just want to see if there's been anything posted. Just kind of give me a heads up. I didn't even know what side of the convention center we were going to be on until a photographer friend of mine had to hear it from someone on staff, and then he posted it on his personal photography page to give us a heads up, oh, by the way, Long Beach is going to be using this part of the convention center. Thankfully, they were using the main part of it, because I prefer the main part of it, rather than going to the arena side of it.
Yeah, and then going into the dungeon to go to the panel rooms.
Yes. So I actually do prefer the Long Beach Comic Con, Comic Expo, taking the regular side of convention center than the arena side.
However, it really stands that they need to up their social media game. Yes, telling us about the guests is great, but I've been to plenty of conventions that have said, oh, by the way, the weather is this, or hey, lines are long, don't forget to bring a hat or something, or any number of other...
Just giving you a heads
up.
Heads-ups,
yeah. For a convention that's been around as long as Long Beach Comic Con, you would really think that they would have taken steps towards having those kind of updates for everyone, because, yeah, for those driving in on Saturday, if you didn't get there early, you have your option of going to Shoreline and taking a long walk, or, like us, throwing our hands in the air and saying, to hell with it, let's go get lunch.
So we just ended up not going on Saturday at all. And the other issues that we have with Long Beach Comic Con is they don't really update their website or their information until the very last minute. And I kind of expect more from Long Beach Comic Con because it's been running on for a while, and we've been there since day one. I would like to see the schedule on the website in a timely manner. And even when I was looking at the schedule, it looked like programming really scaled back this year.
On the point of the websites, Deb and I both were looking at the website for different information. She was looking for various vendors and had difficulty kind of sorting through the way that they had decided to divide up the vendors to make it almost impossible to figure out who's there. I, on the other hand, was looking at guests, trying to figure out what guests were going to be there. Maybe there's someone I want to meet or talk to. And that thing's a whole mess of stuff. Not only that, but it's highly inaccurate. Under the video games section, there is one voice actor there, and it's I'm sorry for not remembering the guy's name, but he's a voice actor from Psychonauts. However, in the voice acting section, they had a voice actor from Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2. They had a voice actor from Assassin's Creed, and they had a voice actor from BioShock, amongst other things that all those guys have done. And those are all video games. Why are they not also listed in the video game section? Also, the guy they did have listed in the video game section, the first 6 things listed are all cartoons, and then 1 video game. I know he's done more video game work than that, but it's in that point of, why not just make a voice actor section? And for video games, put in if there's going to be a pro gamer there, if there's going to be a game dev there. Something like that should be under video games, and any voice actor should just be under voice actors. And they had a lot of things like that, or people who, were under the writers category that, they do articles for a website you've never heard of. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make you a writer.
By that logic, we should be guests of honor at Long Beach Comic Con.
Exactly.
Take a hint.
Yeah, so because of that, but then those same people had other things, like, oh, they're a cosplayer. Oh, they're an actor. They're a...
You kind of do on-camera work for Eat the Magic, Jared.
I do a lot of stuff. The point is, the way it's organized is terrible, and whoever organized it does not... Also, a lot of people double up, so it makes it seem like there's a lot more guests than there are, but if you're paying attention to names, you're like, oh, I've already seen that person 3 times on this list. Because of how they decided to do it. Now, you can click the all button, and you'll, just get everybody, but maybe I'm just looking for voice actors. Maybe I'm just looking for writers, or artists, or whatever. And it's so unorganized and impossible to kind of navigate with any kind of certainty that it really defeats the purpose for having it there in the first place. And the same thing goes for vendors. Because Deb had the same issues. They have all these categories, so she's looking at categories that she's interested in, not finding people that she knows are there, going under another category and seeing them there and saying, what, they do the other thing too. And it's just, get your act together. You've been together as a con for way too long. Hire someone who knows how to run a website properly, run the website properly, hire someone who knows social media, do your social media properly. It's
Please.
Not that hard.
So let's talk about the day we did go.
Yes, and hopefully be less angry.
So I actually did remember that we can park over at the Pike. The Pike is a shopping center that's literally across the street from the Long Beach Convention Center. So we ended up parking there, and that cost us about $15 because I was just kind of a little bit worried, oh yeah, I do remember they charged by the hour, but I forgot what their full day rate was.
Mm-hmm.
We may be at the con for maybe 4 or 5 hours, give or take. Because when we were looking at the schedule again, I really feel like they scaled back with programming. Because it seemed like years prior, there were more programming rooms and a lot more variety with programming. I felt Space Expo, they had an entire dedicated room and an entire programming track. And they really scaled back with the booths for Space Expo and for the guest speakers for Space Expo.
Even their room and their panels, only half the panels in that room were Space Expo and everything else was other stuff. And sadly, a lot of the Space Expo panels were women of space. And I'm like, well, that's great and that's educational and what have you. But I didn't see any listings for the Mars rover. I didn't see listings for all the new telescopes and stuff that we've been launching out into space. And there's a lot of new information coming in about Saturn. And I want to learn about Saturn. So because of that, it really felt lackluster for me. When Virgin Orbit has to be on there as a panel topic, and nothing against Virgin Orbit, that's really cool that we're going to start being able to take day trips to space. But I want the science-y stuff. I want the hard stuff. I was talking about that prior to the con, that was an excitement for me to then look at the schedule and go, or not, that's good too.
Because you wanted to take your younger brother to Long Beach Comic Con because of the space programming.
Yeah, he's going to college to try to go that direction.
And again, it just really seemed really weak and lackluster on that part. And I know you and Deb like to go to Long Beach Comic Con for professional development and networking. And both of you felt that there was very lacking in that department this year.
There weren't that many writer panels per se. And a few that were focused on certain people were people I do not want to network with because of shenanigans they have done in their personal lives that I don't want it to be associated with.
However, we did try to check out a couple of panels.
We did see the Superheroes in Asian Legends panel, which is kind of a false advertising panel.
Which kind of was okay, I was really willing to learn just about different Asian cultures and how they integrate that mythos into their work. For example, like how Dragon Ball like incorporates the work of the Monkey King within that story.
Or things like the various members of the Miyamoto clan who have done legendary things, creation myths of the various lands, which we did briefly touch on, like the Vietnam creation myth
and the China about that in my Vietnamese class,
and the China creation myth with the Phoenix and the Dragon. But that was like the minimalist part of this, and a lot of it went down to Asian American representation, or
which I agree is an important topic of discussion. But when I was looking at the title, I wanted to like just learn more about how we can integrate like Asian mythology within storytelling, and thus that creates like, hey, I haven't heard of this mythology. Cool, like I'm learning something new. And I also feel that representation can be done that way as well. I mean, that's great. You got your Asian American writers. And for the record, I know you can't see my face on this podcast. I'm Filipino American. And I'm like, yeah, I get we need more representation. I say this as someone who has been declined roles as an extra because, by the way, we have too many, we already met our quota for Asians for this production of MTV Sweet 16. True story.
And to point out a balance here, I'm sure the amount of whites and other races comparative to the Asian percentage is probably going to be absurdly, it'll be like a 10 to 1. One Asian for 10 of everything else.
Yeah, so I agree that representation is important, but I kind of felt like it needed a much more authentic title, like Asian Americans in the comic industry. I still would have attended that panel, but I was kind of like just ready to learn about like, cool, how do we incorporate Aswangs, Capres, Duendas in comic books? Like, can we see these characters like in that new Marvel Wave series? Or was it Agents of Atlas?
It'd be Agents of Atlas. And don't hold your breath.
No pun intended. It makes me sad because I was actually pretty hyped for that. Like, I want to get to know these people. I want to get to know, like, superheroes from the Philippines that's written from the Asian American perspective. But at this point, just kind of directions going, like, I'll stick to Dorna.
The sad part is, Greg Pak is a good writer, but a lot of the reviews I've heard for Agents of Atlas is not positive, except for people who are just probably didn't read it and are just happy that there's an Asian character-related comic that's out.
Follow me on this. Like, if any, like, comic book licensing company is out there, I don't care if it's Tokyo Pop or anyone else, if we can get, like, someone to bring in, like, the Mars Ravello comics from the Philippines, like the Darna comics, the She-Man comics over here, I mean, that'd be great.
I think legally they couldn't bring over She-Man. I think there'd be some legal issues. But Darna they could easily bring over, yeah. Or any of the other superheroes they actually have out there. And that would have been a great thing. I if they went that direction of like, oh, by the way, everyone knows all these anime characters who are essentially superheroes, but here's some characters from Korean comics, from Chinese comics, from Filipino comics, Vietnamese comics. That would have been a really interesting panel. I'd have been psyched to learn about comics from other countries.
Because you and I were on that Netflix panel at Anime Expo, and there was like a comic, they were basing this new Netflix show off this Filipino comic series called Trust, and it's basically Philippine X-Files.
Yeah, probably a little bit of Yu Yu Hakusho mixed in there.
So I'm like, I'm totally down for this. I just wish they would like localize this here just so I can support the series, because it's kind of hard to like get things from the Philippines over here. Like, I can't just ask my dad, like, hey dad, I know you're in the Philippines, can you pick me up this and this and this? Because like the import, when you fly from the Philippines to the US, they check your luggage for everything, because they want to make sure you're not smuggling anything into the United States.
I feel like comic books, though, would be something they wouldn't care about.
They're also very anal about intellectual property.
Are they really?
Yes, they're very anal about intellectual property.
Ugh.
So it's not like I can ask my dad to pick me up, like, hey dad, I want to get the latest Enteng Kabisode movies. Enteng Kabisode is pretty much like the Thor of the Philippines. Like, hell, I can even run the panel too, like, Enteng Kabisode, Thor of the Philippines. Enteng Kabisode Part 2. He gets married and has to have a girlfriend. Wacky hijinks ensues.
I think the other thing that kind of irritated me on this panel is you can talk all you want about, how Asian American representation and stuff like that has grown more, But the one thing they barely brought up that I think had a lot of impact on why Asian culture's gotten a huge boom in America in the last 20 or so years is a little thing called manga and anime that gained a huge amount of popularity in the late 90s and early 2000s.
What's manga and anime?
And like a brief reference to Goku or a brief reference to, I say something else they mentioned in there that's older.
They did mention Doraemon.
Yeah, a little bit of talk of that, but I'm like, that had a huge impact. There's a whole bunch of people in their 30s right now that love Asian food, love Asian culture because anime made us go, huh, what else does this country have to offer? Oh, delicious food. Oh, an amazing history. Oh, some cool looking art. And I think that had a lot of impact on just how and why people want to consume more Asian culture type stuff in the United States. In addition to that, in the early 2000s, they did talk about Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which had a huge impact. And there was a nice little kung fu boom there for a little bit before people just moved on to other stuff. But people like me were super happy to have those things coming in. And by the way, if you haven't seen Ong Bak is awesome. I highly recommend Ong Bak.
I also have to give a shout out to Hero because that was like one of my favorite movies of the mid 2000s.
Yeah, Hero is amazing. I've seen that multiple times and I love it.
I always feel like you're getting a new experience anytime you're watching Hero for the second, fourth, fifth, 10th time.
Yeah, looking at the usage of color, looking at the usage of movement, of sound, that ending always gets my blood pumping. Yeah, there's so much to say there, and God, I really want to do a panel on awesome live action Asian movies.
Let's parking lot that idea, shall we?
Yeah, well, we need to get back to the convention itself. The other panel that I attended on Sunday was the Military Veterans and Comics panel, which was really interesting. It had four or five veterans up there talking about their works in either comics or film, and talked a little bit about their military experience and how they got introduced into comics. And it was really cool just hearing them talk about that kind of stuff. One of them, has a smaller film that's coming out the end of this month called Running with the Devil, which looks really cool, and it's essentially about dealing with the drug trade and trying to go military against it, which was a thing that happened in the 90s, and even Tom Clancy wrote about it in Clear and Present Danger. And it looks really cool. It has Nick Cage and Lawrence Fishburne. So they were talking about that a little bit, but just really interesting hearing their stories and how comics kind of get spread around the base, because if people get care packages that have comics, because they're easy to read and they're light, and people just start trading them around, because at a certain point you have the 5 or 6 issues you got from your family or whatever, and then you trade it with someone else. Or if someone is like, I haven't read a comic since I was 8. Oh, dude, check out these new I'm trying to think of a really good run, modern, forget that. I'll go old school. Check out these Green Lantern books from the early 2000s. They're written by Jeff Johns and drawn by Ethan Van Sciver, and they're freaking amazing. Check them out. And then people are reading those, and oh, dude, I had a bunch of trades sent to me. Here's some good Scott Snyder Batman. And, just going around. I bet I could name a Marvel one, but I'm not going to. That's kind of how they kind of get stuff going around like that. And they talk about how they joke around, how there's programs to help them learn to be better in communication and what have you. And how, the GI Bill really helped a lot of them through college and what have you. But it was a really fascinating panel, just hearing them talk and having veterans in the audience stand up and kind of give some of their stories too, including one who was also a comic writer. So that was pretty cool having that. I really do respect veterans and what they went through. I have several family members throughout my history who were in the military. I would have joined the military if not for my visual impairment. So there's a lot to be said about that. I have a huge amount of respect for the military and what they go through. And it was really interesting hearing their stories. And I'm glad that, people are finding, either ways of dealing with stuff or just ways of just expanding their own creative forces within them. After all, how often are you going to get a comic or a movie written by a retired Navy SEAL? That's just awesome. Beyond panels, the only other things we really kind of explored was the dealer hall, and I guess if you want to say the Star Cars a little bit, they were there. Star Cars were kind of crammed.
Yeah, I noticed that this year. We did touch to Star Cars very briefly, but I'm so used to seeing them just being spread out throughout that bridge area. And Star Cars, they were just kind of it felt more like a parking lot than really it was a car show.
Yeah, they were so crammed next to each other. You had a lot of the usual ones that show up, like Kit was there, the Gotham PD car was there.
Yeah, the Jurassic Park vans, the Jeeps. Nothing really new. I mean, they had like their usual Star Wars cars. They had the Love Bug, but there wasn't really anything.
I think I saw the A-Team van. I'm not sure.
It was there, like which is kind of
way in the back.
But it didn't have the turtle van, which made me sad.
And I didn't see a DeLorean either. If it was hidden.
I didn't see a DeLorean either, so I'm confirming that. But yeah, I was really disappointed because they were just kind of like just crammed. It felt more like a parking lot than like a car show. This is one of my favorite parts about Long Beach Comic Con is you can actually see and pose at all the cars outside the front of the convention center. And for those who are curious, who aren't really attending the con but are just kind of passing through for whatever reason, like,
vacation
hey,
people.
Check this out. Like, just take a selfie here. Curious? Check out what's inside. And I was also disappointed with the lack of food trucks this year. Because all we had was like a sushi burrito food truck, a barbecue like stand type thing, and California Pizza Kitchen. And you know my feelings about the California Pizza Kitchen.
Yeah. They really needed George's Greek restaurant there. So I could just have another gyro.
So I was kind of disappointed with the lack of variety of food out there. It's like, what's going on at Long Beach Comic Con? Used to have like a little bit more variety here. I think I would be fine if there was like a sushi food truck, which just had like the simple California rolls and whatnot. But like sushi burritos, well, that's a little bit too much for me.
I like sushi burritos, but not. That's not like a convention food for me.
Sometimes I just need something simple to go. That's not at the convention center food price that I can
for sure.
Really quick. Yeah. Outside and then just come back because I know convention centers like Long Beach doesn't allow for outside food.
Inside the facility, but you can still sit right there at the edge. Although the security seemed pretty chill, I bet we could have snuck something in. However, yeah, the food truck lineup wasn't that great, and the star cars were kind of crammed, and I don't know, it just felt...
I miss them being all spread out because you can take more photos. It gets a lot more people curious. And also, Fleet Week was going on the same weekend, and I was wondering, like, wait, where's all the sailors coming in here? Because I remember when Anime California was at the Long Beach Convention Center on Labor Day weekend, you had all those sailors from Fleet Week coming in. So I'm like, Long Beach, you can get sailors to come in here.
Yeah. They're on a military discount. Let's get some sailors in here.
Let's talk about attendance. It's really hard to judge because Sunday's like the last day, but it's also the cheapest day out of the two.
Yeah.
Saturday, give or take, was $50. Sunday is about $40.
And, usually the last day of an event is the quieter day, but they still had most of the guests there, so it wasn't like... In fact, if anything, it'd be easier to get a autograph on Sunday than it would be on Saturday.
I think it was just easier to get autographs anyway at Long Beach Comic Con since there was like virtually no lines. Anytime we passed by the autograph zone, there wasn't a major line there, and plus Sunday was the Invader Zim Day.
Yeah, which you think would be a huge pull for people, especially close to our age. I mean, it'd be nice if Invader Zim had more than, 2 seasons, but there is a huge fan following for the show, and you think that would have brought in more people on Sunday.
Also, when we were checking out the dealer's hall, it felt really cramped. I'm so used to Long Beach Comic Con's dealer's hall being a lot more wider, a lot more open spaces. And I wouldn't say the convention was crowded on Sunday, but then again, it's really hard to gauge. And I went to just look around the usuals, browse up and down Artist Alley, and I felt there were fewer artists there this year.
I think part of it is the booth spacing was just done oddly.
I also noticed that too because it's done in this funky diagonal kind of way.
Yeah.
And I feel like when you turn one way, you end up back where you started.
It has that problem, and I think because of that, that's why it feels so cramped, because everything's placed at a weird angle instead of, in a grid system where there's an equal space hall or whatever between every booth. I'm waving my arm around here as if people can watch.
Well, then again, you are Greek. You are Mediterranean, so there you go.
This is how we talk.
However, there was one thing I really did like about the dealer's hall, and that was the wrestling ring.
That was cool. It was something they used to have in the early days, and then they stopped for a while, and they brought it back recently. I believe they were also there earlier this year. I will assume it's the same wrestling label. It was done very similar to how they did over at Long Beach Comic Expo earlier this year, where they have their wrestlers cosplay and go battle as those characters. I know last time we saw, you saw Obi-Wan and Anakin, I think, versus... I don't
Spider-Man?
Spider-Man or
And
something.
Deadpool or something to that effect.
Something silly like that. This time around, we watched Supergirl and Wonder Woman versus Black Widow and El Presidente, which I think is just one of their regular dudes. Which is odd because usually if you do a female-male tag team, oftentimes referred to as mixed matches. The other team is a female-male tag team as well, but this time they actually knows the two ladies versus a lady and a huge mountain of a dude. And it made for a really good match, and it's interesting, how the psychology of wrestling can work without having everyone rip a promo or anything. It was just, Black Widow comes in, everyone's really happy, but El Presidente comes in, it's like, wait a second, that doesn't look like a good guy. That guy looks like a big, scary man. And then, Wonder Woman comes out, and everyone loses their mind, especially because they're playing the 70s theme song. And then, Supergirl comes out, and everyone's losing their mind. And as the match goes, and as El Presidente and Black Widow start fighting dirty, you really start to get into hype, and you want Supergirl and Wonder Woman to win. And they did. They won at the end. It was a really great match. Even El Presidente trying to intimidate the ref into doing a fast count on Wonder Woman. There were some really cool little things you would see there, like you would see in a major match. And whether or not the people in the audience know the psychology of wrestling, they definitely were getting into it. As many people as they could get, because, again, it's kind of like wrestling will only have a certain appeal to certain people, but I think if people knew it was actual, superheroes and stuff like that doing the matches, I think a lot more people would have shown up. I think the wrestling needs a little bit more advertising at the con so people know what's there, because I think it's pretty cool that they were having that. I know we also went to a match where they had, I think it was Batman and the Joker or something. It was hard to tell because we were way far in the back. That one had a huge crowd because Batman's actually fighting. That ups the ante quite a bit. But they did a really great job, and I really enjoyed it. And I love that kind of stuff. And it's great that they can go and bring the wrestlers in, and they're all going to throw on a costume and go fight each other for the audience's entertainment. And bravo to them for being there. That was a huge highlight for me. And just watching the match was just a lot of fun. And I'm not going to say it's worth it going to just watch their matches, but I will say that it's a nice added bonus, especially on a day with weaker panels like Sunday.
Also, I noticed that there were 0 cosplay meetups. Usually prior to Long Beach Comic Con, you have the usual suspects organizing the Star Wars photo shoot day, the Disney photo shoot day. And I was looking up okay, how come there's no cosplay photo shoots going on at Long Beach Comic Con? Because I was ready to wear my gender-bent Arthur from Sword in the Stone.
Yeah, you had that packed and everything.
Someone was asking me, at last Comic Expo, hey, do you want to do gender-bent Sword in the Stone? Sure thing. I was looking at the Disney meetup group to solicit anyone who wanted to be a part of our gender-bent Sword in the Stone group. And also to stay in contact with the person who wanted to be Merlin. And I was wait, Robert didn't organize this year. And then I was also noticing, there's no DC Marvel, there's no Star Wars, and I know Robert personally, and I know life happened with him, but I also know that there were several other cons running throughout the weekend, such as Sabacon, Crunchyroll Expo, Dragon Con.
Not only that, but even if Robert can't organize the Disney gathering, you'd think someone else would take up the reins. And the fact that none of the other gatherings came together is even more bizarre to me, because this is a con I used to always bring Constantine to team up with all the DC people.
I usually designate Sunday as my Disney day because I always know that Sunday is the big Disney meetup day. I was sad, it's not happening this year.
Yeah, and I've done the Disney photo shoot a couple of times as well, and it seems really odd to me that just nothing. It doesn't feel right.
So I think we left Long Beach Comic Con just kind of feeling okay. It was cool to just check it out for a bit, but we were just kind of feeling what happened. Because Long Beach Comic Con, we would always talk about how it's always growing, it's thriving, but I feel since last year, things are just going downhill in terms of quality, in terms of attendance, and I really think having it on Labor Day weekend really hurts it, because I really miss it when Long Beach Comic Con was sometime in the middle of September. Yes, I also know that we have LA Comic Con in October, but I also kind of feel the price for Long Beach Comic Con doesn't really match what it offers. Because LA Comic Con, I would rather pay $70 for what LA Comic Con is offering than the $70 at the door for a full weekend at Long Beach Comic Con, because the 70 at the door doesn't really feel worth it to me. The $50 for, what was it, like
Saturday.
$50? Yeah, $50 for Saturday doesn't even feel worth it. $40 Sunday doesn't even feel worth it.
It really doesn't, and that's kind of sad because this was a con we always looked forward to. And the way that the con looked and felt this year felt like what Comic Expo usually is. Comic Expo is usually the smaller one. It's a little fewer people, a little more laid back.
And we're kind of used to that vibe with the smaller Comic Expo. But it just kind of felt surreal that Comic Expo was the bigger event of the two this year.
Yeah, and I do think Labor Day does hurt it, not only because how crowded things were on Saturday. I wonder how many people were maybe planning on going Saturday. They're like, yeah, I'll just grab it out the door, whatever, and then they couldn't go, and like, well, I'm not just going to go on Sunday. And then they just decide to do something else. Also, if it's Labor Day, there's a lot of people who just go off somewhere for vacation. And then, oh, there was a con that weekend? Well, whatever, I was with my family in San Diego, or I was with my family in the Bay Area, or Vegas, or what have you. Depending on your age and whether or not you have a family.
Even I was thinking to myself this year, like, well, is it really worth going back to Long Beach Comic Con this year? Because I didn't really feel anything after last year. Because, like, okay, I can do without this con. And even though you and we had a pretty busy August, Long Beach Comic Con, like, you know what, I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, and it's at that point of if we'd known ahead of time, and, if we had some sort of, if we had the time turner, and we could just go back far enough and say, oh, you know what, it's not going to be that great of an event. Let's just do one of the other events that's not local per se, but, a short car drive or a cheap Southwest flight, and we got this. And that's sad, because I don't like when I don't want to go to a con, it's usually because the con is a hassle, or it's a long plane flight, or something like that. It's not usually in the category of, what's the point? Because most of the cons that get into our what's the point category, we collectively as a group of all the Scarlet Rhapsody teammates essentially decide, yeah, we're not doing that. And there are plenty of events in Southern California that are in that category that we have chosen not to do because we feel that they are inferior events. And Long Beach Comic Con, ever since its first year, has never felt in that category. And this is the first year it's really feeling like, do we go back next year? Not out of it was so horrible, the staff was mean and this and that, just out of a point of...
It just felt like there was it really had nothing to offer.
Yeah, other than running into a few friends, that's about it.
And these are friends that we normally see at conventions. It's not like the end of the world if we don't see them.
Yeah. So the sad part is this might be the first year where at the end of our podcast here, I don't recommend going to Long Beach Comic Con. Unless something changes, I don't see the point of it. There's plenty of other events that do the exact same thing but better. And if you're going to pay these kind of prices, you could get significantly more at a LA Comic Con, like you said. Or, save up a little extra and go to WonderCon.
I would say this. If you're a local with a family, because I did see a lot of families there, I still recommend it as a family-friendly convention if this is one of the few conventions you have to do each year. And if you're local. But even at the same time, I would just even say, just save your money and just go to LA Comic Con.
It really hurts to say this.
It really does, especially when we've been supporting this convention since day one. We were there when Stan Lee cut the red ribbon to Long Beach Comic Con, and it's just kind of sad to kind of see this convention just go down this downward spiral.
Yeah. And I don't know the behind-the-scenes stuff of what's going on. It could just be, the cost of everything is just getting a little high for them. Who knows?
And honestly, I'd be okay if down the road they decide, hey, this is getting too expensive for us to run two events. Let's just combine Comic Expo and Comic Con and just have just one big thing during the year. I'd be okay with that.
Honestly, if they put all the resources into Comic Expo, near the beginning of the year where it has no competition, that would be great. I'd be 100% down, I'd be excited, and I would totally support it. At this point in the year, it does have a lot of competition, as we mentioned, and Labor Day weekend is not a great choice.
And plus next year, I also know people who felt this is kind of at the end of summer / Labor Day weekend, we've already been spent with Anime Expo, San Diego Comic-Con, D23, Anime California, some combination thereof, one or two of the above, and this is just one more expense or one more thing. And okay, we can just kind of just not have to deal with it. And apparently, if Long Beach Comic Con is going to be at the same weekend of Labor Day next year, they're going to have to deal with people who are choosing to go to Dragon Con, because it's always been on Labor Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And you also have the people who are doing Celebration the weekend before.
Oh, right. Celebration's next year. Yay. Let's all cheer for a series that has long since lost its relevancy.
So, want to go watching more TNG?
Hell yeah.
Now, with that said, we really hope that Long Beach Comic Con improves. I mean, it feels really heartbreaking to say that we don't recommend Long Beach Comic Con. We still want to support Long Beach Comic Con from the sidelines and say, yeah, keep going, you can do this, we believe in you, but it's just kind of like you see the kid that you like, or like one of your favorite kids. It's just like seeing like...
It's like a TV series that suddenly got like a really bad season, and you find out that like the writer staff that you really liked has left, or the director has left, or something along those lines, and you're like, well, do I stick with this show? Yeah, it's gonna get another season, but if it's another season like this, do I really want to watch it?
And I think next year we'll just, if we had a choice, and if we see something else that's happening that weekend, I think we're gonna choose that over Long Beach Comic Con.
Yeah, we're gonna change the channel.
With that said, we got LA Comic Con coming up. We're going to be submitting some panels for that convention. A couple news, so keep updated with Scarlet Rhapsody. Follow us on our socials, Facebook, whatnot, to see if we got our panels approved for LA Comic Con. So you have to check that out.
Until next time, remember, the con is what you make it, so make it a good one.
And we'll see you at the con.